and welcome to another Musical Theater Factory vlog. I'm Bill Berry. I'm the producing artistic director here at the Fifth Avenue, and I'm directing this production of the Pajama Game.
And I'm Bob Richard. I'm the choreographer of the show.
I am the director of the show, and that really starts about a year and a half before the show that you come to and see on stage. It begins with looking at the show and trying to understand, what are the themes of the show, what is the show about, finding the language we're going to use to tell the story, working with all the designers to create an environment that will amplify the story and the plot of the show for the audience when they come to it. And then as we do that, we get clear about what we're going to do with the show, and I work with Bob at that point to start to talk about how would we incorporate the dance numbers into the show, how will they, again, amplify the storytelling. And then I begin working with the actors about 4 weeks before you come to see the show, and we rehearse them, and I'm sort of responsible for making sure that everything they do makes sense within the world of the play. And I often think that one of the roles that the director fulfills is the editor and puts everybody in the room and says, okay, show me what you're going to do, and then I try to edit what they do to make it be the clearest, cleanest version of the story that we want to tell.
From Mr. Berry's direction, his vision, together we take the musical numbers and tell the story through dance, through song, through movement.
Bob and I have worked together on a lot of shows over the years, most recently on How to Succeed last season. And, I think both Bob and I have a real affinity for that golden age comedy, the golden age musical comedy.
Love musical comedy.
And so, the How to Succeed was a gift because it is such a well-written, well-constructed show, and the music is so great. And so when we started thinking about what did we want to do together next, I think Pajama Game leapt to mind because it's cut from that same cloth. It's sort of exploring an environment that is very specific. It's a factory. You have all these workers there, and then out of that comes this crazy story that's taking place and all this drama that is specific to almost everybody has workplace drama. Everyone goes, oh, I've been there, I've seen this happen. I think that appeals to me is that it's so relatable, even though it's so specific to the story we're telling. I think what's interesting is one of the things that sort of almost automatically has to happen is you're evoking Fosse, because you cannot separate the Fosse dancing from the dance arrangements that were created for Fosse shows.
Yes.
They're so idiosyncratic in how they're put together that as you start to work on the dance, you hear cowbells and things that are very peculiar in some ways, but identifiable as, oh, that's Fosse's influence on the musical sound of the show. And he worked with a great dance arranger to create them, but you're sort of forced in a way into creating things that are Fosse-esque.
Beautifully forced into. So
yeah.
it gives you that stop, bop, bop, ba-da. It has the stop time and the push and the feel and the drive. It's just, it was his passion that's still there.
I think the other thing that you and I talked about just this morning was this idea that we don't really want to recreate in a very exacting replica way anything that Fosse did, because even Fosse wouldn't do it the same way today.
He always changed his stuff, even through his progression of his years. As he looked at his own work, he always nuanced it to the dancers that he was working with.
And he was smart. I mean, his choreography was really smart about how to help tell the story in a way that isn't always entirely obvious to anyone, but it's always pushing a story forward. And so I think that's something we also are oh, we have to live up to that. It's a responsibility to try to do. It's easy to dismiss them as, oh, that's a musical comedy from the 1950s. It'll just be fun and frivolous, and why even bother doing it? Well, I think there are two answers to that. One is, it is fun and frivolous, and in the world we live in today, it's fun to go to the theater and have a good time. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need that as human beings, or how are we going to live through whatever thing that's happening in our lives that's giving us trouble? We need joy. So in our world today, having a moment to come to the Fifth Avenue Theater and see Pajama Game so you can have some joy in your life, that's good for everybody. That helps us cope.
I think that's what, as artists, we strive for. We live to be a part of telling those stories, to keep those things alive.
I think the other part of it is that these stories do resonate today, And they maybe do it in ways that we're not always aware of because they're not blatantly standing there proselytizing about any particular subject. But when you look at a show like Pajama Game, we still are struggling with what is a fair wage,
Yep.
and how do we treat workers, and we still have male-female relationship issues and imbalances of power, and how does that work itself out? And so we can go to a show like the Pajama Game, have a great time, but we're also experiencing things that are like, we thought we'd come so far, and yet we're still talking about the exact same thing. What does it mean to make a little bit more money? How will that help us be a better society because people will have the economic mobility to move forward in their lives? That's a conversation we're having right now. Come to the Pajama Game and have a good time, and you get to experience that through dance and fun and musical comedy. And it's just a fun way to think about this topic and realize, wow, this is an ongoing conversation. Probably will be forever.
That's a little behind the scenes look at the Sleep Tite Pajama Factory of the Pajama Game. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the Fifth Avenue Theater.